The fourth day, timetable. Fundamental of Buddhism, historical evolution and philosophical traditions. So historical evolutions, I am focusing historical evolution. Professor Mishra might have thought about philosophical evolution. I am combining both historical evolution and philosophical evolution. And I did my PhD in history and my masters and MPhil have been trained in Buddhist philosophy. So interestingly, I have been trained in both for 6 years in history and 6 years in philosophy. And I myself, for more than 20 years, I have been into both, in Buddhism, studying Buddhism. However, I can do some justice with both. So here in this class, I will particularly focus on history. Yes. The way generally history has been taught in modern sense, history as a subject is not considered to be something which is objective. Objective means, there was a king in this date and he did this. History is not studied like that. The way you must have studied in school. Here, history is not just one narrative, one story. It may have multiple narrative, multiple stories. And a historian's job is how to find consistency, how to find a coherent meaning out of those multiple stories. So if you have attended previous class, I gave one typical example of India's independence, where it can be seen in multiple ways. So I have already shared that this slide which is there in the Google Classroom. Study these slides. Also, there will be, as usual, a small test based on the discussions in next week. Monday first. Tuesday. Monday. So in my class, I generally, because this is a postgraduate class, so I teach a separate course in 4th semester on this historiography of Buddhism. It's a specialized course, elective course. You may take, you may not. It's up to you. But right now, I have given some description. What is historiography? So history, very clearly history of history. That how history has been written. How history has been written. History of history. The way we were told what was Buddha's life. So that's the history of Buddha. But somebody wrote it. Right? So how he wrote it? What text he used? What tools he used? What ideology he used? That all present us the life of Buddha, what we call history of Buddhism or history of Buddha. So multiple sources are there. So there is no just one story of Buddha. There are multiple stories. Buddha Charita tells you another story. Lalikrishna tells you another story. Which is correct? We don't know, and we can't know. So there is a way how we write history, and so generally in historiography, that advanced course I'm talking about, I'll just give a glimpse of that. Discussions on the biasness. Biasness means one-sidedness. Suppose I'm Buddhist, so I have a Buddhist bias. Like Buddhism is my tradition, so Buddhism is great. I'm Hindu, so I'll feel Buddhism is fine, but Hinduism is better than Buddhism. I'm a Christian, I have a feeling Christianity. I'm Indian, I feel India is better than others. This is called biasness. Not necessarily I feel that, but that is what we call biasness. So there might be biasness when you are reading history. And there might be perspective of historians. Historian might be Marxist, follower of one ideology, follower of nationalist, follower of some other ideology, coming from some ethnicity, so that we are bound to have. So we study that aspect. What is the perspective? What perspective we have? The person may not claim I am a Marxist, I am a nationalist, but he may have a perspective. So, in order to study history, you have to see these as well. That why somebody is telling some certain story. If I am a follower of Tibetan tradition, I'll tell you something different. And if I am follower of Sri Lankan Pali Buddhism, I will tell you something different. I have been studied with both masters. I know they teach Buddhism differently. Translation of the terms, original Sanskrit or Pali terms are also different. For example, when it is Sanya or Sangya, Pali scholars they translate and explain it as a faculty of cognizance. Tibetan scholars they translate it as a faculty of discrimination. How mind discriminates things. Another tradition says how mind cognizes things. Sanskrit term is same. This definition and explanation of translation is coming from their own biases. So we have multiple ways of looking at things and how which we are receiving. For example, as a Theravada Buddhist, you must have studied some story, and as a say Mahayana, you must have studied a different story, and you believe that is true. And when you come in this type of classroom, you meet Mahayana and Theravada and Tibetan and Buddhist and multiple others, and they all know different story. So that biasness and perspective of historians. Influence and political and social agenda. This is another important. There is a particular social and political agenda also, hidden, not apparent. But if the government, present government, right now the present government which is ruling India is more nationalist. So it will, rather than promoting a Marxist history, which I showed you earlier that how India's history has been written. So when Britishers were ruling, they promoted this type of history. When present government promotes this type of history, and previous government did not present exactly this, but a sort of this. So the way of writing history keeps changing. So history is not just one history, and that is why before we go into deeper aspects, we need to know, at least know this, that history is not one. So there is political and social agenda. And I am talking because I have never been outside of India, so I know only about India. But just think about your own country. You might have these types of things. In every country, these things are happening. But you have some political, social agenda. Government has, you don't have it. And maybe you might be affiliated with government or opposed. You were opposing the government. Both possibilities are there. So, and government they have the agenda because they have to run the country, they have to win the elections and elections are there. Evolution of the historical methodology. How methodology have developed over time. Now we have lots of books about Buddhism, so we can develop a different methodology. 50 years back, say Mahayana Sanskrit were not there. Sanskrit Buddhism was altogether absent. Sanskrit. So that methodology did not develop. So we established one Nalanda, Nalanda Mahavira, which was Pali based. But original Nalanda had not a single scholar of Pali. So government established another Nalanda. Why? Because methodology has changed. New books have come, new ideas have come. 50 years, in the last 50 years. Tibetan and Himalayan Buddhism came into mainstream. 50, 60 years back it was not there. So 50, 60 years back, scholars who used to study history, Buddhist history, they have different idea. Now we have a different idea. So it keeps changing. Don't think, and that is why it's there is no problem when I say my professor taught me wrong. I'm not denigrating them. They taught wrong, yes, that's a fact, they also know it. And they only promote me, like, they tell, yes, you should speak about it. Because if there is a genuine scholar, he knows the limitation. We should know as a historian, as a scholar, we should know our limitations, strength and limitations too. So that's how, there was a scientist, I think I gave this example earlier, who discovered electron as a subatomic particle. His name was J.J. Thomson. He got Nobel Prize. And his son also got a Nobel Prize. He proved his father wrong. So that is how a scientific mind should develop. There is no heresy. Fortunately, in Buddhism and Hinduism, there is no heresy or there is no blasphemy. Like you tell your masters or Buddha or your scriptures wrong and you will be persecuted. You don't have to worry. So, in Islam, that problem is there. In Christianity, to some extent, that is there. But at least here, that is not. So, you can go on. So, method. It also encompasses debates over interpretation of historical events. Now, how to interpret historical events? You get something, you get a book from people, you get a sculpture somewhere, from ruins. How to interpret? Multiple interpretation. I don't know in this whether I will be teaching epigraphy or not. But to senior batch, I taught a course on reading Ashokan inscription written in Brahmi on Ashokan pillar. So I know I can read Ashokan inscription 2,500 years back, the way Ashoka wrote. And there are inscriptions. Now there is a written record. Nobody can challenge because Ashoka during Ashokan time period those got recorded. But the interpretation is drastically different. And it can vary. There is inscription recipe, Bhatinam Sabhavinikam Sakudalam Yam Salilam Dine Bhagava Bhagavatakilana. These two lines are written. But how to interpret it is very difficult. And I know the language, I know the script, and so all the historians, those who are trained in that, but how to interpret, there are three opposite interpretations of that same two lines. And everybody knows the language. But how to interpret, that's a problem. So that also debates about interpretation of history. Even though you have a Ashokan inscription, you can't interpret just the way it appears to you. Multiple inconsistencies are there. So these things are not taught at school level. Why? Because if you are learning A for apple at your kindergarten, you all learn from for A for apple, A for apple. Right? But when you grew up, you knew that A for multiple things. But if you teach a child A for apple, and you can't teach a small child that A for multiple things. That is how education develops, pedagogy develops. But later on, when you grow up, you should know A for multiple things. Similarly, now we are in postgraduate class, so we can't take just one story, A for apple. If you still believe A for apple, that means you are still in kindergarten LKG. Similarly, here, multiple philosophy, multiple stories, multiple perspectives. And you should be open for that. Otherwise, you won't grow up. You will tell A for apple, A for apple. And you will be happy, very easy, A for apple. And you say, sir, brings always confusing idea. Right? And if I tell you A for apple, you will feel very happy. Like the story which you know is repeat the same story. I can do that, easy for me, and you will feel very happy. You can't grow unless you bring multiple perspectives. So that's the idea why we are purposely confusing you. No, I tell my students don't ask me questions. If you ask questions, no, jokingly you should ask questions. I will give such answer that will be you will be more confused. That's what why you ask that question. The way you ask. Yeah, that's my approach. And there is nothing wrong about it. Because there is no one concrete answer for many questions. And Buddha remained silent for some questions. It was not that he did not know the answer. And for multiple times he gave opposite answers. And that is why we have different philosophical schools and all those debates are there. Which school is the highest school? Madhyamika or Chittamatra? Or Vaibhashika or Sautla? They all proclaim that they are highest. Anyway, so these inconsistencies are there. Debates are there. Construction of historical narrative. So then when, as I said, you get multiple ideas, you try to construct, try to frame a story out of that. So that is construction of multiple narratives. Impact of contemporary ideologies on historical understanding. So we also will study how different ideology impact, how they impact. Just yesterday I wrote a paper in Hindi on Buddhism, history of Buddhism, and it got rejected by the editor. And the editor wrote to me, he's a very good friend of mine, we are friends for more than 15 years. And he said that we have our limitation. We can't publish something which is countering our ideology. Even though it is fact, he knows. If you present certain, say, when you go to conference, you are asked to submit abstract. What you are going to present, that's a norm. And if you send some abstract which is opposed, say, the kind of narrative which I bring for Buddhism, and if I'm asked to present such, if I send my abstract truthfully, say to some Chinese university, they are doing some conference, it is likely to be rejected. You are getting? Because I bring such certain discourse which do not fall into their narrative. I bring such discourses which do not fall into, so, and it's not that, so there is impact of ideologies and historical understanding. So it has an implication. The way we write history, it has an implication. In the kind of distorted history which got created in India, it's very problematic. Most of you are not Indian, so you are not aware. But because I have been into Buddhist studies, I know how problematic it is. The kind of Buddhism has been promoted because of British, political mind. It created a big rift in Indian culture. No, but no, wait. I just spoke no, British because they have had to rule. The thing is, but I don't blame Britishers for that. Now it has been 75 years after independence. We could have corrected many things. Still, the political, that is why, in India's independence, the second narrative which I gave, that India became independent, but it remained sort of the same rules, same political ideologies, same narrative kept on. They have not changed. Because when somebody is ruling you from outside, you have to accept what. But now you are independent, you are not corrected. So those problems are there still. And as I said, India is still a wounded civilization. It's not dead civilization. No, Roman, Egyptian, Greek, they are dead civilization. India has a continuous history for 5,000 years. And when I am saying India, I mean Asia, entire Asia. Don't mean India just. In that sense, it's a wounded civilization. We got independence just 75 years back. My father and mother, they were brought up in a British India, British Empire. And they still have the memory. My great-grandfather died in freedom struggle. So it's not something of very past. We have the memory. So we are wounded civilization. But that does not mean, okay, of course, India is not fighting. You know what? British ancestors, we can't blame for current British, and we have a very good relations with British government present. I was offered scholarship by Commonwealth, the British government, which I did not go, but yes, I was offered. Okay. No, I'm grateful for that.
So how is India treating this wound then? And when will it recover fully?
We don't know. Sometimes you start enjoying your pain. There are many people who don't want that to be healed also.
Yes, I get that feeling. You like the suffering.
So they have, they have been habituated, and they are not trying to, you could have healed. 75 years is a long time.
It is a long time.
But still, anyway. So that impact is there. So, in a sense, our discussion is this, we will involve a crucial examination, critical examination. Critical means with, not accepting it directly, whatever. We'll criticize positive criticism and negative criticism, both. Positive criticism is, say, suppose you have not done good in examination. So I will tell you need to improve upon. I am criticizing you, but it is a positive criticism. My intention is not to downgrade you, but to improve, for your improvement. So that's a positive criticism. And some negative criticism, if something you have done bad, I'll criticize you that this was bad, your discipline was not good. So it is negative criticism. So both type of criticism should be done. critical examination of how Buddhist history has been created, has been studied, written, understood, and the exploration of various factors that shape historical interpretation of Buddhism and its narrative. So when we are studying, next class will be, I think Professor Misra has taught you about life of Buddha.
Yes. Yes.
So okay, I'll skip that. I'll directly jump upon them. The what happened after Buddha Parinirvana, first council, and second council, and third council. Okay, is not covered that. No, I'll cover that next class. So what are the multiple, about this history of councils? We have multiple stories. Tibetan story or Sanskrit sources, Chinese sources tell you another story. While Sri Lankan sources tell you another story. Especially about second council, there is a great debate. In first council also there is a debate. Whether Mahayana Sutras were discussed during first council or not, there is also debate. After Buddha's Mahaparinirvana, Mahayana Sutras were there or not there? That is the debate. Still, that debate is not today's debate, since in ancient Nalanda also they debated all this. So we will discuss that. So next class will be on the council. Not the one council or one narrative, I will bring multiple, and that will confuse you. So be prepared for those confusions. No, it's very simple to give you one narrative. But that does not help in order to develop your critical thinking. So how these exploration shape historical interpretation of Buddhism? So we will also discuss why such narratives are coming. Why some texts are skipping one council or one history. That's another idea. We will not just discuss what, but also why they are skipping and not they are putting. And why they are putting certain, emphasizing certain. For example, in Sri Lanka, if you study their text, Deepavamsa, Deepavamsa, what does it say about Buddha? Buddha's connection with Sri Lanka. According to Deepavamsa, a very old text written compiled around 2nd, 3rd century, well, at least 1500 years valid, tells Buddha visited Sri Lanka thrice. Are you aware of this? That Buddha went to Sri Lanka? But Sri Lankan text tells them. And not once, he visited thrice, 3 times. Now why they are saying that? We'll discuss these types of things as well, which is not a common, but for Sri Lankan it's important, and it should be important. And there is no harm, there is no problem in saying Buddha visited thrice. Why? There is a reason for that. We'll discuss that. That's it. When I study history or I teach history, my idea is to make sense of the books, not to establish this is a fact or this is not the fact. Why such narratives got made? Why such? And what was their need? And why they were relevant? We will see how this inquiry plays a crucial role in shaping the way we understand and interpret present Buddhism. We will examine why this type of inquiry is necessary. We will quickly discuss almost 5 minutes. This all already have shared by the way, but for examination, the MCQ will be based on all this. So I am explaining it again, and so that you read it. So there is methodological issue when you write history. So there are multiple challenges when you write history. And how you write history, one is called source criticism. That means what is your source? Textual, archaeological, epigraphical. Epigraphy means these inscriptions which were written in ancient times on pillars, on stone. That is epigraphical. So historian must critically evaluate the authenticity of sources. Authenticity means the books which, when books were translated, got translated from India to Tibet 1,000 years back, they developed a methodology to examine what are fake books. I can write something and tell this is Buddha's Buddha Vajra, Buddha. So there was a methodology which long back they developed to examine. So and presently also we need to examine how if some historian is writing history of Buddha, we need to examine from what are the sources from where, why he is telling us such a story. So that's source criticism, authenticity, reliability of historical sources. Primary documents are not only text but also artifacts, like how to interpret, and you can't trust Wikipedia. I often tell my students if you search, say, Lokiteshvara, and if you search Lokiteshvara Wikipedia, I hope you all know what Wikipedia is. And if you click Wikipedia or Lokiteshvara article, and if you see this image, this is copied from Nalanda only, by the way, and this is not our Lokiteshvara. This is a manuscript. We don't rely such sources. And this is not I am saying, already this has been established. Many historians, but still Wikipedia there is a wrong image. This is not our Lokiteshvara. So again, and it's not, this is an established fact. If you go to Delhi Museum, this image is not with Lokiteshvara, it's manuscript. It's written there. In Delhi. And long back, earlier they thought this is our Lokiteshvara, but when the evidences came, the books came from Tibet and Nepal, they corrected. So there are many wrong facts. This is not I am talking about ideology. Ideology we can have, this is a fact. And how confidently I can say, because they misidentify, this is not a lotus, but it is a water lily. It is and Avalokiteshvara holds a lotus, while Manjush still holds lily. So you need to know all these details in order to, and that is how you can criticize. This is not Avalokiteshvara. You can establish this, and people will accept it. So don't trust always the books or Wikipedia or there are many multiple. This is one you will find hundreds of such wrong facts across internet or Wikipedia or even scholarly books also. So that is what we call source criticism. You need to check what are your sources. Don't consume food without seeing the ingredients. Suppose I am vegetarian. And last year I ate for 1 year because my mother passed away. So in our tradition we don't consume even onion garlic. So I had to see all the earlier onion garlic is I was eating food, but now I have to see in detail. So there is because onion garlic is very common in India. So I need to see that onion garlic. So anyway, if you need to consume your food, see the expiry date. So the way you see expiry date, similarly our texts also, mostly written by university scholars or modern scholars, they get expired. Expired means after 50 years, new books, new facts come. So what 50 years back somebody was narrating might become wrong, and there is nothing wrong with that. That is how, as I said, science develops. So see when the book was written, who has written the book, see the person's ideology. No, these all historian or author try to check from where what are their inclination and then read the book. It's not a big job nowadays. Thanks to internet, very quickly you can see that who is the person who has written the book, what is his background. Don't consume the food which has been served to you. Don't do that. Try to check. Otherwise, if you consume rotten food, the stomach will be problem. Similarly, if you consume some rotten food for your mind, you read the book, actually your mind is consuming that. You are sitting in my class, your mind is getting, something. So don't just consume anything. Criticize. Whatever I am speaking, don't accept that way. Try to listen to it, get it verified. Similarly, when you read the book, try to get it verified. Of course, Buddha was born in Lumbini, you don't have to verify. But if I say certain things that Buddha left his house not because of this, then you need to verify. Maybe I'm telling someone who have, to misguide you. Possible. So verify. Wherever you have confusion, don't outrightly reject. Try to verify.
Sir, but
So that's what is also criticism. Yeah. Interpretation and is a level next class. Anyway, you read. Also, I have not explained all this, but this is part of your examination. If you have problem in understanding, put this paragraph into ChatGPT and ask ChatGPT to explain this paragraph.